Hello there guys, welcome back to ShootOut, welcome back to a brand new video. Well, we talk about making predictions and it turns out that I was on the brink of getting mine correctly, and I'm glad it didn't come through because George's came through, bang on the money, and it means Chelsea have made a semi-final of a competition. George, how are we doing? How are we feeling after yesterday's crazy end to the game? Penalty shootout, Chelsea are through. Your thoughts?
I think we need to find a shootout sponsor for the channel that people can just like take our little punts, and usually one of us can get it bang on. It's not actually usually like that. This is bad advice for managing your money. But I'm
This is not
delighted.
financial advice.
No, this is absolutely not financial advice. But I'm buzzing, mate, to be honest. I think it was one of those games where we were either just going to sink back into that same old rhythm of Chelsea dominate but don't score. And then all of a sudden, at the end, I think we basically won the game with Mudrik's goal. I know that obviously we had to then score all the penalties. Newcastle had to miss 2 of them, save 1 of them, whatever it is. But I think it was just that momentum from the end of that game after persistent domination for the whole thing. That's the worst I've seen Newcastle play all year. And it was probably very average Chelsea, if we're being very blunt and honest about it. But I think overall, the momentum just saw us over the line in that penalty shootout.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. You're completely right. There are things to dissect, and we will dissect them. But it was a tale of, I reckon, 2 bits of luck for the goals, both goals. I mean, we got it at a moment that was a massive, you know, as you said, massive swing of emotion and swing of momentum, and all of a sudden everything just went into our favour. But if we're going to talk about the game as a whole and the way that it went down, your initial thoughts with the lineup and that first goal when Newcastle, Callum Wilson going in between 3. I mean, Sunday League era, wasn't it?
I mean, of all of the goals that we've seen this season, and we've conceded some absolute mares, by the way, some total, complete and utter disaster class goals. This one was up there, if you analyse the actual goal that we conceded, as probably the worst, I'd say. Colwill, awful pass to Caicedo, who looks as though his legs are about to fall off as he slips over and loses the ball. Thiago Silva looks as though he doesn't know if he's got 4 legs, 2 legs, or even 1 leg, and almost falls over himself. And then Benoit Badiashile basically realised that if you're not feeling very well, you don't start a competitive game of football against strong Premier League opposition. And then Petrovic can do absolutely nothing, take nothing away from the goalkeeper. It's a good finish from Callum Wilson, but that's what you do. Newcastle are a good team. Callum Wilson is a predator in front of goal. He's a bully, and he knew exactly what he was doing. But it was a disaster, an absolute flipping disaster. But I think in a game like this where Chelsea have obviously been struggling for confidence, Newcastle have got bundles of injuries. Yeah, they want to win this competition, but they've had like AC Milan to play, PSG to play, Man United to play, Chelsea to play already before. Loads of Premier League games. They're threadbare, to say the least, right now. And I think you've kind of got to... Chelsea have been due, I think, a game like this where we don't make it pretty, we don't make it easy, we don't play that well, but we actually get over the line. I think it's more... It's bigger what this victory means as opposed to how the football was, for me, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, no, you're right. Because if we were to look at the football for what it was, right, I wasn't happy up until, I'd say, maybe the last... you know what? I wasn't happy up until the substitutions that needed to be made, where we ended up with a team on the pitch that I think should have started, right? So at that point, you could start to see... Mate, that is it. So once we ended up with that, you could start to see we were moving in a way that I think would have benefited us if we'd started with that team in the first place. So for the entire game, I was honestly thinking, well, this is just the same old mess, really, isn't it? And it's a case of we... off the ball are not moving quick enough. There isn't enough intensity. There isn't enough speed, tempo for a cup quarter final. But once the fullbacks came on and we started playing in positions that we needed to be playing in, all of a sudden you could see some patterns emerge, and that did help swing even more momentum in our favour. So that's something. But the result and what this brings, the late goal and then the penalty shootout, you know, that is going to be a confidence booster. And I'm hoping that's going to bring some momentum, at least, and also be a wake-up call to Poch for playing players in their positions and making sure that we actually do what we need to do from the offset. But
Yeah.
this is what I wanted to also focus on in terms of the lineup. When we started off and we had that flat centre back four, and the fullbacks were not on, what's your assessment in terms of that? And then when we actually did bring on fullbacks and we did bring on the players that we needed to have on the pitch, I think everyone can agree. Your assessment of the two variations of the Chelsea we saw.
Yeah, I think you said it already with the word flat. It was so flat in that first half. Levi Colwill is not yet a left back, even though Poch is somehow trying to mould him into one. But like, he steps into the positions, but it's always a bit too late. It's a bit erratic. He's not quite established. Like, remember when we see Chilwell when he was at his best, bombing forward. He's the furthest man up the pitch. Colwell's not going to be that guy. Axel Disasi, I think, is a careful footballer, which makes him kind of tidy when he's defending. But as a result of that, the fact that these guys are not fully competent with going forward, the shape of the team was kind of scrappy. Because both of those fullbacks, Colwill, Disasi, they're not really comfortable going forwards, bombing forwards and putting pressure on the two Newcastle fullbacks. The moment Malo Gusto comes on, you can see it in the first 5-6 minutes of that half. Not only is Gusto always looking to get forward, but he's willing to carry the ball out. He's willing to dribble out with it into the middle, which kind of allows then the midfield to progress a bit more, to give them a bit more freedom, to speed up the tempo as to how Chelsea transition. So for me, it's at a point now where when we're trying to mould these centre-backs into full-backs, because we've got 4 of our top 4, I would say, full-backs injured at the club most of the time. Like, Reece James is out, Gusto has been out, Cucurella's out, Chilwell's out. Ian Matson's going to leave for sure, because he does not deserve what he's got in terms of the treatment from Pochettino of not even being given a chance really, and playing a centre-back in that position. So he's gone. I would say that in the games that we've got coming up, if you think about the next fixtures, we've got Wolves, got Palace, got Luton, I think Preston in the Cup and Fulham are the next 5 matches off the top of my head. These are all games where Chelsea can't be flat. We have got to be going with a shape which allows us to attack. We've got to be using competent fullbacks to get forward at any given opportunity, to start pinning teams in and suffocating teams to a point where goals are going to come. We're still not looking fluid in the final third. So in order to get the better probability of scoring more than the opposition, you've got to create more than the opposition. And it's having competent fullbacks that's going to allow us to do that.
You're completely right. And, I think that is honestly the key as to why I was frustrated up until when, obviously, we had Gusto on and later on Maatsen as well, at just how slow the tempo was and how many times we had to resort to just passing backwards, right? You could see the difference that was made once we had fullbacks on the pitch that were willing to overload and undercut and making sure they're inverting and making sure they're adding extra bodies into the final third, which, as you've said, allows 2 things. It allows the midfield or the certain lines that we have to progress even further forward and press higher up, right, when we are on the ball. And also it allows spaces for players to move into. We weren't seeing players move quick enough. It was all a little bit too static. And I don't understand that. And that's where I honestly have to look at Pochettino for that. That's Pochettino's job, in order to tell players exactly where they need to move and how quick they need to move and what spaces to exploit. But it doesn't help when he doesn't play fullbacks. So when that does happen and we see them on the pitch, and Maatsen, for example, Gusto was great for what it's worth because he's not a left back, he's a right back, but he was doing good on that left-hand side. Moves over to the right, we have Maatsen on the left, and you can see the difference that even Maatsen made. So it's like, it goes to show, Maatsen's leaving the club, and this is why I don't feel like he's playing. But he needs to play if he's available, and we don't have a left back. Do you know what I mean? So that made the difference. I feel for me, that made the difference. And the 2 goals, like I said, strokes of luck. I know people are going to criticise the way that Newcastle played, but I feel like, look, that was their plan. And in football, if we've given them a reason for them to have that plan, which is what happened, right? We had a defensive calamity, and they roll with it, that's their decision. We got to deal with it. So they were close, very, very close. If it wasn't for Kieran Trippier, I think, you know what? He's a blue in disguise. He's proper Chelsea. It's not the first time he's done
He
this.
is. He didn't he
At
tweet
the
in
bridge.
2014. He's like, "Come on, Chelsea." He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I love Kieran
He did.
Trippier. I was also at that game in Russia where he scored that free kick, and that's one of the best moments of my life. So, big trips, mate. If you want a trip to Bali, you can have my spare room. Don't worry about it. You can stay for free, mate. Not that you need a free room, but you know what I mean. Top lad. Unbelievable.
Mate, and at the bridge, when was it? I think not long ago, he scored an own goal, didn't it? Like he tried to pass back to his keeper and it went past the keeper and slotted into the net.
He
loves it at the bridge. He loves it. He loves it. So his mistake is what cost Newcastle. Mudryk was there to pounce. If it wasn't for that, it would have been difficult for us to score, I feel. So that's definitely something we got to reflect on. But Mudryk was there. He pounced. He came on. He took the opportunity. And he got us back into the game. Your thoughts on those subs that came on and made the difference, and Petrovic as well in his performance?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Petrovic because I think it's good for a goalkeeper when we've not been sold on Sanchez yet. It's good for a keeper to come in, show a little bit of steel. I think the way that he actually moved for the penalties, apart from Bruno's one, was excellent. He got close to a couple of others, even Wilson's one. So that's positive. And I would say about Pochettino, like if we break down sub by sub without like monotonously breaking it down, actually sub by sub, changing Gusto on early was brilliant because he clearly recognised that there was no width and no progression from those fullbacks. Then, as the game's going on, Nkunku is obviously the man that you said could play 20 minutes on the bench, and he's the world-class attacker. You bring him on, and it's not too late. That's good. As much as Nkunku was kind of a muchness, it's the right move to make. Then you bring, I can't remember who else came on now, to be quite honest, but Armando Broja also came on and his movement was kind of good, but then Jackson goes out wide. Then you've got Sterling coming off, who I don't think had a very good game whatsoever, which is kind of just a classic Raheem Sterling game. It was having Mudryk at that time of the game. And if Mudryk is not going to be starting matches for Chelsea, what he absolutely has to do is be that guy who puts serious pressure on the opposition defence in those latter stages. Chelsea putting the ball in the box against Newcastle is stupid. They're going to win absolutely everything in the air, whether it's their first choice centre-backs or their second string centre-backs. Keep crossing it, and eventually, at that point of the game, players are going to be tired. And Mudryk's run that he made was brilliant. So I think even then, when you've got Gusto moving to right back to give us a bit more right-footed competence on the right, you've got Ian Maatsen, a natural left-footed player, playing in his natural position. It allowed Mudryk to make that inside run. It allowed there to be width, whereas if the ball doesn't go across and in the box to Mudryk, Maatsen's there getting forward now because he loves that. So I think all in all, every substitution Pochettino made, I totally forgot the order of it, but it was something like I just said. I think that was game-changing for Chelsea. And I think as much as we should criticise the starting 11 not being right, which at this point of the season, having played 17 Premier League games, we're now into the semi-final of the Carabao Cup, Poch should be getting some of these choices right from the first place. We shouldn't be chasing a game and getting lucky in a match like that where we dominated from minute one. So it's definitely a learning curve, and I think the night and day between the first half and the second half will hopefully, with the next games we've got coming up, which should be winnable, make Pochettino's decision to make the right choices easier, in my opinion.
You're completely right. This is something that needs to be carried forward, and it's evident. I feel like this is something that everyone from the offset knew already. I know about your lineup for the preview into this game. I had Gusto and Maatsen starting because that's the right back and full back that we have. Mudryk right now, you've made a good point, seems to be better playing as like an impact sub. Do you know what I mean? Latter stages of the game, burst of energy. Newcastle, with everything that they can't really handle at the moment, it's difficult. Hello?
Sorry, mate. Keep going. I completely accidentally
no worries.
Control cued the call. Just keep going. I'm still recording.
We'll edit, no problem. Mudryk coming on as an impact sub is better for him, it seems. He's able to really use his burst, especially against a Newcastle team that, not just with injuries, but they're scheduled, they're tired, they're having to just defend. Yeah. It's difficult. So Mudryk is definitely, I feel like in his capacity as an impact sub, more lethal than when he starts, which is something that maybe we need to bear in mind. But this is definitely something we can bring momentum in. And you're right in saying Pochettino needs to take these lessons that we've learned and move it forward into the Premier League. And hopefully we can come up with a run of results. Fingers crossed. One player that I feel like we have to focus on before we end is Petrovic. Right? Now, he made the heroic save at the end. He had a great penalty shootout. And he had a decent game, if I'm honest. We don't really know much about Petrovic. But am I right in saying it's one performance that we've seen against a top team like Newcastle? Do you look at him and think he's more balanced than Sanchez? And do you think that he's got a chance of being number one if he keeps up a run of form?
Do you know what? Look, I think Sanchez is a good guy. But when in football, when you're fans of a football team, you can't just say someone's a good guy. It doesn't count for anything when results and performances are literally the bread and butter that we're looking to eat. Robert Sanchez gives the ball away with his awful distribution far too often. I think Petrovic has better distribution than Sanchez, and I also feel as though players are a little bit more confident to give him the ball. I don't think he's certainly not a finished goalkeeper, but then again, he's only 24, and goalkeepers aren't usually finished goalkeepers for another 6 years senior of that age. So I would say, at this moment in time, for Petrovic, he absolutely at least deserves the 2 semi-final Carabao Cup legs. It could be against Liverpool, Middlesbrough and Fulham. You'd hope that Chelsea over 2 legs can win that. Even against Liverpool, Petrovic starts. And I think at the moment, we're not sure about Sanchez's injury. Looks as though Petrovic will probably be in there for the next 4 or 5 games. Depends if we can bring in a keeper early January. Maybe he loses that spot. Maybe then he goes down to number 3. I don't know. But from what I've seen so far, you can only judge what you've seen. And that is a clean sheet in his first Premier League game, bar with nothing to do, okay, whatever. But then also, he did all he needed to do against Newcastle. Couldn't do anything about the goal. It's not his fault whatsoever. And he's a big, imposing goalie, which absolutely is in Chelsea's favour when it comes to... He seems fearless. Like, I've watched these videos of him when he's in the MLS, and he loves going out at defenders, running out at strikers, running out at them, lunging in, diving in, putting his body out, spreading it wide. And I think Chelsea kind of need a bit of confidence like that. I think with Sanchez, he just seems to be a bit like too cool for school. He's a bit blasé about being a keeper. I don't know. I've just not been sold on Sanchez. And when your goalie is the hero in a penalty shootout and now you're in a semi-final, of course I'm going to sit here and say I back this guy right now. And I think until I've seen any calamitous errors or any reasons to say otherwise, I wouldn't let him lose his place yet at this point. What about you?
No, honestly, I mean, look, it's definitely early to say, is he going to be number one? Well, it's too early. But he's got a big opportunity here, and he's got something to build on, because that was a great save that he made in the penalty shootout. He had a good performance. In the game in itself, he had a good performance. The goal wasn't his fault. He had nothing to do there. And as you said, he does seem like he's carrying a bit more command, a bit more confidence. The defence trusts him a little bit more. Sanchez carries the stigma of being Brighton's third choice goalkeeper, which is something Chelsea fans didn't sit with from the very beginning. And you can see, as you're right, the distribution can be a calamity sometimes. And that was the reason why we were meant to bring him in, because he apparently was meant to have good distribution, unlike a Kepa, for example. So with Petrovic, he's got a big opportunity here. Sanchez is out for a while. Petrovic can build on this, and as long as he's balanced and not making any crazy errors, then he could walk into the number one spot, because we haven't got anyone else. So big opportunity for him, and I wish him the best, and I hope that he does do it, because I honestly, just the first impressions that I'm getting, I feel more confident with him so far. So let's wait and see what happens. And as I've said, great save that he made in the penalty shootout to send us to the semi-final. And Chelsea are in the semi-final. Unbelievable. Despite the performances we've been putting in, Chelsea find ourselves in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. And I couldn't be happier, because that should be a non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned for a competition like this. We do find ourselves there. Fantastic. And we've got to see what happens in the draw. Is it going to be Liverpool-West Ham, or is it going to be Middlesbrough or Fulham? We'll see. But George, your final thoughts and your final impressions on this fixture and how Chelsea move forward in this competition?
Mate, I'm just flipping delighted that we've won 2 games in a row, even though we didn't technically win the game. We've won 2 in a row. And I think it's about bloody time that we got excited, allowed ourselves to get excited. If the draw isn't Liverpool, I think we can win this competition. So with that being said, let's bloody go and get it, shall we? Let's lift that flipping trophy.
Let's see what that draw's going to say, and we'll be giving you a reaction to that. That video will be on Friday, so make sure you guys are here for that. Next one coming up is going to be Premier League predictions, and let's see how we take Chelsea going into the Wolves game this weekend. So make sure you guys are there for that. Hit that subscribe button. And yeah, George, any final words before we call it a day?
No, let's skedaddle.
All right, let's skedaddle. See you on the next one.